Sometimes you just know your life's about to change in the most amazing way. I did. And all I had to do was hang my head in my hands and cry, Universe, please, 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 put me on the right path. 12 hours later, I was being called to my new boss's office. He wanted a divorce, and I wanted something I could finally agree with him on. That was 3 years ago. I remember it because it was the day before my husband's birthday, 2 days before we were setting out on our family and friends' Thanksgiving beach vacation. That week was about me, my oceanfront view, and the cold North Florida wind calling bullshit on this entire situation. But even in those early days, it was too late to look back. I knew exactly what had happened. People were always underestimating my intelligence and intuitive ability to read the room and figure out that a leadership coup was in full throttle. Look, I'd claimed a personal victory the second I was asked to sign that hush money agreement for almost double the severance my at-will employment letter said I could get. So you mean I can have all my time and a six-figure check directly deposited to my bank account? Yes, please. And thank you. I will sign this as soon as I make you sweat a day thinking I might not agree to keep all those secrets. Bye-bye. I would absolutely, and I did, let the whole place and any semblance of my once upon a time functioning HR department rest in its shattered pieces. I mean, you can't quietly wipe out an entire HR department and think no one is going to eventually ask, WTF is actually going on around here? Listen, I was by no means out of the woods. I still had an uphill battle to fight. My husband. Eventually, he'd want me to get another job, but that was not an option for me, or at least not one I'd be giving any real consideration to. And sorry to my husband, who's probably hearing this hard-coded truth for the first time, right along with the rest of you. So, out of his spousal duress, masking fear of us having to retire in a beachfront cardboard refrigerator box, I acquiesced and applied for the same job I had, just a different place and fewer employees. But I knew something my husband didn't. I knew there was absolutely no way the universe was going to hand me this job when an honest response to, why do you want to work here? Would have been to get a steady paycheck while building my own business. Obviously, I didn't want or get that job. But that exercise in enduring a 3-month hiring process delivered something even better. A little bit more time to win my war. My little business was booming, and not even my expert number crunching husband could deny that. So, why then, amidst all that success, would I decide to just stop building the HR side of my business, the side that keeps the lights on? Well, easy. Because HR is completely incapable of addressing the fundamental issue at work. The entire US employment system is broken, outdated at best. What do you think HR is going to do for you when its credentialing agency, universities across America, and corporations themselves have no desire other than perpetuating a poor performing system? Exactly. Nothing. It's not in their job description to fix the entire industrial complex and its Department of Daycare and standardized testing. HR is a pawn just like you. Everyone thinks with human in the name, they might be somehow responsible for the sheer and utter hell it can be to even try making a living in this country. But nope, HR people didn't design the system. It came as a pre-populated template. Do whatever you can do within the limits of whatever the laws are this week to make us look like we give a crap about people around here. And whatever you do, make it convincing. That's when I stumbled across that Lily Tomlin quote. I always wondered why somebody doesn't do something about that. Then I realized I was somebody. And it was really that simple. I am somebody. So, am I going to be the kind of somebody who complains and writes pithy Substack articles about it? Or am I going to be the somebody who does something, gives it the old a couple of college degrees try? So, listen, I've been in human resources since before they gave us email. So, I might know a thing or two about why it has gotten systemically less human and more focused. Well, let's be honest, totally focused on numbers. It wasn't always like this. Trust me. That's one of the reasons I decided to get an early start in HR in the first place. Less math. But it quickly became all that mattered. It went from transactional, you want $25 out of your 401k this week? Okay, here's your receipt, to operational. If you want to be really good HR, you must know your company's operations, which is code for, do we really need all those people to make our little widget? To getting a seat at the strategic table, meaning, can't you make a better presentation on the reasons why no one wants to work here or anywhere for that matter? And this is where we come to multiple forks in the road that all boil down to this. Nothing in this country was consciously built on being human. And to me, that is the root cause of anything you can look at, including every aspect of employment, and say, this is really messed up. Now, because I want to actually fix things, I don't have time to research every nuance of the exact who, when, and where, but I'm reasonably certain I've got the what and the why, and that's all we need to get started. So let's get started with the why. Why? 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 Now, let's put that with the what. Why would anyone want to prevent people from learning how to peacefully exist with unlimited earning power for doing whatever they love doing, as long as it doesn't intentionally harm someone else? It's really as simple as that. We've simply refused to ask the question and demand the right answer. So, what is the right answer? It's mindset, silly. And you don't believe me? Then let's ask. Let's ask God. Let's ask everyone's gods. So, is mindset the answer to everything? Absolutely yes. The world's major religious texts speak directly to the power of mindset, thought, inner state, discernment, and human responsibility for shaping reality. They don't use the modern word mindset, but they express the exact same principle. Your inner world determines your outer world. Your thoughts create consequences. Your beliefs shape your path. Your mind must be disciplined, guarded, renewed, and awakened. Let's look at Christianity, the Bible, the Old and New Testament. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. This is one of the clearest and most aligned biblical statements. What you think equals what you become. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Paul is literally describing mindset as transformation. Be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. This is one of the most mindset-forward verses in all of Scripture. Guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. According to your faith, be it unto you. Your belief determines your outcomes. For as he thinks within himself, so he is. Let this mind be in you. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. How about let's look at Judaism? The world is sustained by the breath of the children who study. We do not see things as they are. We see things as we were. Thought is the father of deed. A person's thoughts are the source of good and evil. How about Islam? Indeed, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. Actions are but by intention. Each person is a mirror to his brother. The heart is the commander of the body. Buddhism. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. The mind is everything. All experiences are preceded by mind. Hinduism. For one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. As is one's thought, so one becomes. When the mind is pure, joy follows like a shadow. Taoism. Mastering others is strength. Mastering yourself is true power. If you correct your mind, the rest of your life will fall into place. When the mind is still, the universe surrenders. Native and indigenous wisdom. We are the ones we have been waiting for. Your mind is your first creation. Your world is your second. So, does God address mindset? Yes, in every religious tradition. If we boil down all these teachings, they say your thoughts shape your life, your inner world creates your outer world, change starts within, intention controls outcomes, your mind is the true battleground, consciousness is the creator, your beliefs define your path. God supports those who take responsibility for their inner state. In theological language, mindset is the meeting place between free will and divine order. Well, what about Plato, Emerson, Napoleon Hill, Bob Proctor? What do they all have in common? Well, every single one of them also tried telling humanity in their own era, with their own language, in their own way, the same thing. Everything is mind. Everything begins in mind. Everything is shaped by mind. And if you understand that simple principle, you understand why the whole US workforce has been trapped inside a system that is fundamentally incapable of helping them. But when you ignore mindset, you trap people in mechanics. And when you trap people in mechanics, you turn them into machinery. And when you turn people into machinery, you get exactly what we have now. A human resources department in a country full of under-resourced humans. That's not an accident. That's a design flaw. And I finally realized, human resources? No. We are entering the era of human resurgence. America doesn't have a workforce problem. America has a mindset problem. And that problem was manufactured. You were never taught how your mind works. You were never taught how your beliefs form or how your intention shapes reality. You were never taught how to regulate your nervous system, direct your thoughts, or understand your internal power. You were taught compliance, performance, and measurement. You were taught to be useful, not powerful. You were taught how to be a worker, not how to be a human. And that, my friends, is why the entire US employment system feels like it's actively working against your soul's design. Because it is. And then came the moment I realized HR was never the thing that needed to be fixed. Humans just needed to be understood. Work needed to be reimagined, and the United States needed to be revived. And that one day it hit me like a metaphysical lightning bolt. I am the person who's supposed to build the thing I wish I had. I am the person who's supposed to say the things no one in HR is allowed to say. I am the person who's supposed to bring mindset out of the shadows, out of the bookstores, out of the woo-woo aisle, and into workplaces, boardrooms, schools, cities, and the national conversation. Because how dare we call ourselves the land of opportunity and still refuse to teach people how to access the part of themselves that creates opportunity? That's when everything changed. I wasn't building an HR consultancy. I wasn't even building a coaching practice. I wasn't writing a few Substack articles. I was architecting a national operating system for mindset, for humans, for work, for America, the Boulder way. And to walk you into that, I want to take you through the single realization that changed my life more than any job, any degree, or any paycheck. Mindset is not a trend. Mindset is not self-help. Mindset is not motivational content. Mindset is the hidden infrastructure of your entire reality. Everything rises or falls internally, professionally, nationally, on the quality of thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and identity that you run. So yes, of course, Plato said it. Of course, Emerson said it. Of course, Napoleon Hill said it. Of course, Bob Proctor said it. And of course, God said it. They all pointed to one thing. Mindset is the source code. Workplaces are the interface. America is the output. And once you finally see that, you're not going to unsee it. That's the moment you go from being a resource to becoming a force. That's the moment you stop trying to fit into the system and start building the new one. And that, my friend, is where this podcast really begins. Because if I'm going to talk to you about the bolder way, not the buzzword way, not the corporate way, not the influencer way, but the actual metaphysical meets operational, human meets national, self meets system way, then we need to start with the truth. Mindset is not self-improvement. Mindset is sovereignty. Mindset is power. And mindset is the blueprint for a new American reality. And you're here because you're ready to upgrade yours. So let's go deeper. Let's go bigger. Let's go bolder. America was not built with a human in mind. It was built with a system in mind. A system that needed workers, a system that needed compliance, a system that needed productivity, output, predictability, stability, and most importantly, control. A system that was architected long before neuroscience, emotional intelligence, trauma research, positive psychology, or metaphysics ever entered the scene. We inherited a 250-year-old operating system and then slapped HR onto it like a human Band-Aid on a mechanical machine. But the people inside the system, they evolved. Their minds evolved. Their needs evolved. Their potential evolved. The system didn't. Instead, we kept upgrading the machinery, not the humans. We optimized the workflows, not the well-being. We built better metrics, not better mindsets. And then we sat around asking, why is no one engaged? Why is everyone burned out? Why is the workforce so angry? Why does no one want to work anymore? It's simple. The system outgrew its own humanity. Work became numbers. People became data. Success became measurement. Leadership became performance. And HR, bless our professional hearts, HR became the official department of, can you please make this look human? But it wasn't, and we knew it. Let me say this very clearly. The U.S. employment system is functioning exactly as designed. What you're experiencing is not dysfunction. It's the expected outcome of a human-less design. And I regret to inform you, no one except me is coming to fix it. Not the HR industry, not academia, not the corporate machine, not the credentialing agencies, not Congress. Because fixing it would require a full system reboot, not a policy change, not a benefits update, not another training, not a tighter mission statement. It would require putting the human back in the center, which means putting the mind back in the center, which means putting consciousness back in the center. No one is going to do that for you. So I am, and we are, together, right here, right now. Because everything that's broken in America can be traced back to one root cause. No one ever taught us how to be human. They only taught us how to be workers. And in a country where people don't understand how their own minds work, three things happen. First, you lose your sense of personal power. Second, you outsource your thinking to systems. And third, you confuse survival with purpose. How do I know? Because that's exactly what we've been doing for decades. But the moment you put the human back at the center, the entire system starts to transform around them. Because humans, real humans, bring creativity, intuition, innovation. Humans bring ideas, meaning, internal guidance. Humans bring conscious intention and the very fuel an economic engine is actually made of. Humans are not the problem. Humans are the power source. And when you put the human back in, work becomes purpose. Companies become communities, leadership becomes service, and your life becomes something more than filling out timesheets, responding to emails, and praying your PTO request gets approved. This podcast, The Bolder Way, is about putting human back in, not spiritually, not politically, not academically, but structurally. You see, once you understand how your mind works, you become impossible to manipulate, impossible to suppress, and impossible to ignore. And that is why mindset wasn't taught. Not because it wasn't important, but because it was too powerful. America didn't need more workers. America needed more humans. America still does. And that's why you're here, because we're going to rebuild this thing, the self, the workplace, and the nation from the inside out. So let me tell you about the moment I realized I wasn't rebuilding HR, I was rebuilding America. It was quiet. It was me. I'm sitting in my office with my laptop on my knees, and I got my spreadsheets open, and the HR inquiries are flowing in, and my invoices are getting paid. I've got work lined up for 3 months out, and I'm feeling absolutely nothing. Not really like any excitement, no like spark, no real purpose. I just had this like deep, unmistakable knowing, like, Julie, this is too small. Not small like insignificant, but small as in like I didn't survive all of this to rebuild the very thing that tried to break me. And I swear to you, this is how fast the realization hit. If HR wasn't designed with a human in mind, and work wasn't designed with a human in mind, and the US system wasn't designed with a human in mind, then maybe the thing I was actually building wasn't a department. It was a country. I didn't choose that thought. That thought chose me. I didn't try to have that thought. It just arrived and it said, America doesn't need HR reform. America needs a human reinvention. Not one company at a time, a whole new framework, a new blueprint, a new operating system for a country that has forgotten who runs it. The human, the worker, the mind, the individual, the collective, the people. The system was never designed for your liberation. It was designed for your labor. And the minute that I saw that clearly, like everything I'd ever done, HR, consulting, coaching, metaphysics, leadership development, personal development, governance frameworks, public policy research, all the universal laws, every single thing snapped into place like a cosmic jigsaw puzzle. It all had one target, upgrading the human to upgrade the country that the human creates. I wasn't building HR services. I was building a mindset operating system, a national framework, a renaissance of human potential, a reimagined America built on consciousness, not compliance. I was building the bolder way. And once you see that path, that kind of a path, that path becomes you. And once you see the architecture of a new America, the old one just stops making sense. And once you see the mind as the mechanism, the system becomes editable. And that's when it all clicks for me. I wasn't repairing the machine, I was replacing the blueprints. And if you want a nation that is more just, more prosperous, and more unified, more innovative, and more free, you don't start with legislation. You don't start with corporations. You don't even start with the economy. You start with the human. You start with the mind. You start at the root. You reboot the human, you reimagine work, and you revitalize the United States. That's the framework, that's the philosophy, that's the mission. That is the bolder way. And the moment I realized that, the moment I understood the scale of what I was actually building, my life stopped being about how do I get another job and became how do I help an entire country wake up? That's why this podcast exists. I'm not here to entertain you or motivate you. I don't want to give you cute little quotes. This podcast is not motivation content. This podcast is a national curriculum, a curriculum for a new America, a curriculum for human resurgence, a curriculum for the future version of us that remembers who we are. Before we can talk about work, the economy, or even America, we have to talk about you. Because nothing in this country changes until the human running it changes. Not Congress, not corporations, not the courts, not the markets, not the media. You. Humans create systems. Systems do not create humans. And yet somehow we ended up in a world where the system influences the human more than the human influences the system. That's backwards and upside down. So the bolder way starts exactly where any real renaissance starts, from the inside out. It starts with rebooting human. So what does that actually mean? Well, let me tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean self-help. It doesn't mean be more positive. It doesn't mean manifest a yacht. It doesn't mean think happy thoughts and your boss will magically become competent. No. Rebooting human means this. You learn the truth about how your mind actually works. Not the version you were taught, not the version culture sells you, but the real scientific, metaphysical, beautifully inconvenient truth. It means learning how your thoughts compute reality, your beliefs filter perception, your emotions regulate your energy field, your nervous system controls your choices, your identity shapes your behavior, your internal assumptions build your external life, and your mindset, your entire mental operating system, is the single most powerful force you will ever command. Every problem you've struggled with, every pattern you've repeated, every job you've outgrown, every relationship you've questioned, every national headline that makes you feel powerless, all of them tie back to one thing. The system you were given for your mind was not built by you, and it was not built for you. So before we can talk about reinventing work or revitalizing the country, we have to do something far more radical. We reset the human. We reset the internal operating system. We reset the mind back to its factory settings before conditioning, before fear, before programming, before the system told you who you were allowed to be. Rebooting human is not a concept. It's a reclamation. It is the moment you stop seeing yourself as a worker, a role, a title, a function, a cog, a resume, an output, and you start seeing yourself as the source of your own experience. You can't upgrade a country full of people who haven't upgraded themselves. You can't build unity with humans who are internally divided. And you can't create innovation with minds stuck in survival mode. You can't create fairness with people who have no sense of their own power. You can't create meaningful work in a culture that doesn't know how meaning works. America is not stuck because Americans are lazy. America is stuck because Americans are untrained, not in job skills, but in human skills. No one ever taught us how to be human in a system that asks us to behave like machinery. Rebooting Human is the solution to that. It's the foundation of the Boulder Way. It's the starting point for upgrading work, and it's the only path to revitalizing the United States. If you want a better world, you don't start with the world. You start with the human who builds it. And that human is you. Now, once the human is rebooted, everything else becomes possible. So, once you reboot the human, once you understand your own mind, your identity, beliefs, emotional system, attention, and your inner architecture, something happens. You stop showing up to work as an employee and you start showing up as a conscious creator. Most workplaces don't even know what to do with someone like that. Not just because they're disruptive, but because they're super powerful. When you reboot the human, three things become instantly non-negotiable. One, you can no longer tolerate systems that limit you. Two, you can no longer participate in work that misuses you. And three, you begin to see the entire workplace for what it is, a reflection of whoever designed it. And guess what? Most workplaces weren't designed by humans. They were designed by systems, old ones, industrial ones, mechanistic ones. Work as you know it today was built during a time when obedience was valued over originality. Tasks mattered more than talent, and roles mattered more than purpose. Hierarchy mattered more than humanity. Conformity mattered more than consciousness. And that's still the model running most every organization in America, which means if you want workplaces to evolve, you don't upgrade HR, you upgrade humans. That's the secret. That is the leverage point. And that's the power that no CEO, no policy, no seat at the table, no new HR certification will ever touch. Because when humans upgrade internally, engagement stops being a metric, burnout stops being normal, productivity stops being coercion, culture stops being a branding exercise, and leadership stops being a performance. Work stops being survival. Work becomes expression. Work becomes meaning. Work becomes power. Work becomes a conscious act. Reimagining work isn't about perks. It's not about your hybrid schedules. It's not about, do we bring people back to the office? No, reimagining work means this. We redesign work around the psychology, biology, and metaphysics of the human being running it. That's the future. That's the shift. That's pillar two. You cannot reimagine a workplace with a workforce that's still unconscious. You cannot redesign workflow with people who don't understand how their own minds work. You cannot build meaningful work with a culture stuck in survival mode. You cannot build a successful company with humans who have never been taught how to be successful. Everything ties back to pillar one, rebooting human. Because once the human upgrades, the workplace has no choice but to evolve with him. That's why so many workplaces feel like they're cracking at the seams right now. They weren't built for the version of human that's emerging. The worker is changing faster than the workplace, and the workplace is changing faster than the nation. Which brings us to the real linchpin of this framework. You cannot upgrade work without upgrading the country it operates in. Because work exists inside a national system, a legal system, a cultural system, a financial system, a human system. And if those systems remain outdated, everything built inside them stays outdated too. Which brings us to pillar three, revitalizing US. Because the moment you reboot the human and reimagine work, you inevitably run into the truth. The country itself needs a reboot. And that's where this podcast becomes something bigger than ideas, bigger than HR, bigger than mindset, bigger than episodes. This becomes the blueprint for a new America, one built from the inside out. Let me say something very clearly because it matters for everything we're building together. Revitalizing us, revitalizing US, is not political. It is psychological. It's energetic and systematic. I'm not here to argue left versus right because America isn't in crisis because of Republicans, and America isn't in crisis because of Democrats. America is in crisis because humans have never been taught how their own minds work. And we built an entire nation on minds that were never trained to handle power. Sit with that. We've been expecting unity, productivity, innovation, empathy, civic responsibility, critical thinking, collaboration, fairness, and national maturity from a population that has never been given the psychological infrastructure to create it. This is not a values issue. It's not a moral issue, and it's not a political issue. This is a human development issue. Every national problem you see, and I mean every single one, can be traced back to an untrained human mind operating inside an outdated system. Division? That's what happens when identity forms without awareness. Polarization? That's what happens when beliefs get triggered instead of examined. Misinformation? That's what happens when attention is hijacked instead of directed. Hopelessness? That's what happens when a nervous system is stuck in survival mode. Economic stagnation? That's what happens when creativity and intuition are never activated. Broken workplaces? That's what happens when purpose and potential are never developed. We have been treating the symptoms of a country that never learned how to be a country of conscious humans. America cannot revitalize until Americans do. You cannot achieve national unity with millions of people who are internally divided. You cannot build a successful economy when the workplace and the workforce is energetically depleted. You cannot build trust in a country where people don't trust their own thinking. And you cannot build progress when the nation's operating system is running on outdated human software. Revitalizing US is the natural result of upgrading the human. Because when humans evolve, their workplaces evolve. And when workplaces evolve, the nation evolves. Revitalizing us is not a political movement. It is a human maturity movement. It's a consciousness movement. It's an operational movement. It is understanding that you cannot legislate your way out of a mindset deficit. You can only evolve your way out. And that right there is why the Boulder way is structured the way it is. Rebooting human, upgrade the individual. Reimagining work, upgrade the workplace. Revitalizing us, upgrade the nation. It's a sequence, a system, a strategy, a literal national operating system built on humans, not mechanics. And the most important part, revitalizing us will not come from Washington, D.C. It will come from you. A nation is not the government. A nation is its people. And when the people evolve, the country has no choice but to evolve with them. We don't need a revolution in the streets. We need a revolution in our minds. We need a revolution in consciousness. A bolder way, a human resurgence, a national awakening built not on anger, but on awareness. As we close out this episode, here's what I want you to understand. The Boulder Way is not a slogan. It is a blueprint. It's a blueprint for individuals, for workplaces, and for America. It's a structure, a sequence, a system that works because it aligns with how humans actually function. When you follow the Boulder Way, three things happen, and they happen every single time. One, you reclaim your internal power. You stop outsourcing your thinking. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop limiting your potential. You stop contorting yourself for systems that were never designed for your soul. You become your own conscious, clear, unmistakable human power source. 2, your work transforms from survival to expression. You begin showing up differently, more grounded, more intuitive, more creative, and more aligned. You stop tolerating leaders who lead from fear. You stop participating in cultures built on performance anxiety. You start seeing the entire workplace as a mirror you're now able to polish. And when humans shift, the workplace shifts. It has to, because consciousness is more powerful than any policy, pay grade, or performance metric. 3, you become a catalyst for national transformation. Not by voting more often, not by arguing louder, not by convincing people, not by changing parties, but by becoming the kind of human a nation can actually evolve around. Because countries do not rise because of governments. Countries rise because of people. People with clarity, people with awareness, people with sovereignty, people who know how to think for themselves. When you follow this blueprint, the Boulder way, you stop feeling powerless in your own country. You stop feeling like the workforce is ignored, like the systems are broken, like no one sees the human behind the output. You start realizing the hard-coded truth. You are not a resource in America. You are a force that makes America. And when humans like you step into that reality, really step into it, the country changes. Work becomes humane. Systems become conscious. Communities become collaborative. People become powerful. And the United States of America becomes something it has never truly been. A nation built on human design. That is human resurgence. That is the mission. That is the movement. That is why we are here. The Boulder Way isn't about optimism. It's about architecture. And we're rebuilding this thing together from the inside out. That is the Boulder Way. If this message resonated with you, then you're exactly where you're meant to be. This is just the beginning of a whole new path for you, for your work, and for your country. So before you go, do me one favor. Do all of us one favor. Subscribe to this podcast. Like it, share it with someone who's ready for more, and get on our email list at theboulderway.com so you never miss an episode, an update, or a national moment we're about to create together. Because we're not just listening to a podcast, we're building a blueprint, we're building a movement, we're building a new American mindset, one human at a time, one workplace at a time, one United States at a time. I'm Dr. Julie Oldbury, and this is The Boulder Way. Until next time, think bolder, work better, live freer. And remember, you are the upgrade.